I always thought numbers didn't lie. That's what drew me to accounting in the first place. Numbers were reliable, predictable. They told the truth even when people didn't. But that Monday afternoon, sitting alone in the Carter Technologies finance department, my belief in numbers turned into a gnawing sense of dread. It started innocently enough. A routine audit, the kind of thing I could do in my sleep. Except this time, something wasn't adding up. The wire transfer logs showed anomalies. Tiny discrepancies that most people would overlook. But the more I dug, the more patterns emerged. These weren't simple errors. They were deliberate. My stomach churned as I pieced together the puzzle. Someone inside the company was siphoning money, a lot of it. At first, I thought I must have been mistaken. Carter Technologies was one of the most prestigious firms in the state, and Ethan Carter, the CEO, was practically revered. He was sharp, respected, and ruthless when it came to protecting his empire. This kind of fraud didn't happen on his watch. Or so I thought. The decision to report my findings wasn't easy. Part of me wanted to pretend I hadn't seen anything, to go back to my quiet, uneventful life. But I couldn't. The weight of it was too much, like carrying a secret that could topple an empire. When I finally sat across from Ethan Carter in his office, my palms were clammy, and my voice wavered as I explained the unauthorized transactions. His expression remained unreadable, his piercing blue eyes fixed on me. I expected him to dismiss me, maybe even accuse me of being wrong. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, his jaw tightening as I laid out the timeline. "Clara," he said finally, his tone measured. "You're sure about this?" "Yes, sir," I replied, sliding over a flash drive. "These are the records. Whoever's behind this has been masking the transfers as legitimate expenses for years. We're talking millions." He didn't say anything at first, just stared at the flash drive like it was a ticking bomb. Then, without a word, he stood and walked to the window, his back to me. It was in that moment I realized the weight of what I'd uncovered. This wasn't just about stolen money. It was about trust and betrayal. And judging by the tension in Ethan's shoulders, he already had a suspect in mind. Ethan called in Lucas Reed, a forensic accountant known for uncovering corporate fraud, and Owen Clark, a security consultant with a reputation for discretion. I expected the investigation to confirm my findings and end there. Didn't. Lucas discovered something far worse. A sprawling network of fraud that extended beyond the company's finances. Corporate espionage. Someone inside Carter Technologies wasn't just stealing money. They were leaking critical data to competitors. Owen, meanwhile, installed surveillance systems to monitor key employees, and what his footage revealed left all of us reeling. The first blow came when Owen presented his findings to Ethan. Logan Taylor, the company's vice president and one of Ethan's closest allies, was at the center of the fraud. That alone was devastating. But then Owen hesitated, glancing at Ethan before playing another clip. The footage showed Sophia Carter, Ethan's wife, meeting Logan in a secluded location. They weren't discussing business. I wasn't in the room when Ethan watched the video, but the aftermath was palpable. He emerged from his office pale, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought he might shatter his teeth. The betrayals kept piling up, each one more personal than the last. The final blow came when Ethan ordered a paternity test for his son, Nathan. I'd heard the rumors circulating around the office, whispers about Nathan not resembling Ethan in the slightest. But hearing the confirmation was something else entirely. The test revealed the truth Ethan feared most. Nathan wasn't his child. Logan was. Ethan didn't rage or throw things like I might have expected. Instead, he grew eerily calm. He thanked me for bringing the fraud to his attention and assured me I'd done the right thing. But there was a quiet fire in his eyes, a look that made my skin crawl. "Clara," he said one evening as I was preparing to leave the office. "This stays between us. I'll handle it from here." And handle it he did. Over the next few weeks, I watched as Ethan meticulously assembled his counterattack. He didn't just want justice, he wanted destruction. Using my findings, along with the evidence from Lucas and Owen, he began constructing a case so airtight, not even Logan's charm or Sophia's lies could poke holes in it. But there was something darker brewing beneath Ethan's calm demeanor. It wasn't just about exposing the fraud or dealing with the infidelity. He wanted them to suffer. The first domino fell on a Thursday afternoon, though none of us realized it at the time. Ethan called a surprise board meeting, his tone so casual you'd think he was announcing a new product launch. But as I sat in the back of the room, taking notes as usual, I couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. I wasn't wrong. As Ethan began his presentation, he clicked to the first slide. My breath caught in my throat as the screen lit up with damning evidence. Wire transfer logs, footage of Sophia and Logan, and a title that read, "Breach of Trust." "This is only the beginning," he announced, his voice steady but laced with menace. "By the time I'm done, there won't be anything left for them to salvage." The day Ethan Carter introduced me to Priya Sharma was the day I realized just how far he was willing to go. I thought my discovery of the fraud was the turning point, but Priya's involvement took everything to a level I hadn't anticipated. Priya wasn't like the other tech experts at Carter Technologies. She didn't blend in or play the part of a corporate cog. She was sharp, bold, and unapologetically confident, her dark eyes brimming with intelligence. "You must be Clara," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Ethan's told me about your diligence. Impressive work." I nodded, feeling a little out of place in the room where Priya, Lucas Reed, and Ethan stood. It felt like I was being ushered into an inner circle, one that operated under an entirely different set of rules. "Priya will oversee the next phase," Ethan explained, his tone steady but laced with an undercurrent of urgency. "We need a shadow network, something invisible to Logan and anyone else involved. Can you do it?" "Not only can I do it," Priya replied with a small smirk, "they won't even know it's there. This isn't my first rodeo." Over the next few weeks, Priya worked tirelessly to build the system. She called it Spectre, an undetectable monitoring network that would track every digital move within the company. Every email, file transfer, and login would be mirrored in real time, feeding directly into her encrypted server. To cover her tracks, Priya orchestrated a series of routine upgrades across the company's systems. Employees groaned about the disruptions, oblivious to the true nature of her work. Logan, meanwhile, continued his duties as if nothing was amiss. I caught glimpses of him in meetings, his confidence unshaken, his charm intact. If he suspected Ethan's growing knowledge, he didn't show it. But Ethan wasn't just watching. He was collecting. Every action Logan took, from approving questionable transactions to hastily deleting files, was preserved in Priya's vault. It was like watching a spider spin a web, each thread tightening around its prey. Lucas Reed's investigation added another layer to the scheme. He traced the embezzled funds to a shell company called Apex Enterprises. On the surface, Apex was legitimate, but Lucas's analysis revealed its true owners: Logan Taylor and Jonathan King. Jonathan King was a name I hadn't heard in years, but Ethan's reaction to it was telling. His jaw clenched, and his voice turned cold as he explained the history. Jonathan had been Ethan's rival since their early days in tech. They'd competed fiercely, but King had always played dirty, resorting to sabotage and underhanded deals to stay ahead. "Of course he's involved," Ethan muttered, pacing his office. "Logan's betrayal is bad enough, but Jonathan? This just made it personal." Ethan's anger wasn't wild or chaotic. It was calculated, like a storm brewing on the horizon. I'd seen him angry before, but this was different. This wasn't just about business or money. This was about loyalty and the people he thought he could trust. The next piece of the puzzle came in the form of Olivia Sanchez, a rising star in the FBI's white-collar crime division. Olivia was ambitious, sharp, and relentless, the kind of person who thrived on high-stakes cases. Ethan brought her in quietly, briefing her on the evidence we'd gathered so far. Olivia's enthusiasm was palpable. "If this is as airtight as you say, it could be career-defining," she said, her tone a mix of excitement and determination. "You're giving me a gift, Ethan. I won't waste it." The partnership between Ethan and Olivia was a powerful one. With her resources and his insider knowledge, the net tightened even further around Logan and his co-conspirators. But not everyone in Ethan's camp was on board with the plan. Matthew Hayes, Carter Technologies' head of security, had always been a loyalist, or so we thought. Priya's system flagged his activity one evening, revealing his attempts to delete files tied to Logan's transactions. When confronted, Hayes claimed ignorance, but the evidence was damning. Ethan wasted no time involving Olivia and her team. They staged Hayes' arrest in broad daylight, right in the company's main lobby. The sight of federal agents leading him away in handcuffs sent shockwaves through the office. Whispers spread like wildfire, and the tension was palpable. The fallout from Hayes' arrest was exactly what Ethan needed. Panic rippled through the ranks of the conspiracy. Logan and his allies scrambled to cover their tracks, unaware that every frantic move was being logged by Priya's system. It was a paradox. The harder they tried to erase their involvement, the more evidence they left behind. Ethan watched it all unfold with a mix of satisfaction and resolve. Every deleted email, every hushed conversation in the hallway, every encrypted phone call. It was all captured, cataloged, and analyzed. The revelations came faster now, each one more devastating than the last. Logan wasn't just siphoning money. He was feeding Jonathan King's sensitive company data, including blueprints for upcoming projects. It was corporate sabotage on a massive scale, and the implications were staggering. But the most chilling revelation came from Owen Clark, the security consultant. He intercepted a conversation between Logan and Sophia. Their voices were hushed, but the content was clear. They were plotting something. Not just an escape plan, but a way to turn the tables on Ethan. Ethan didn't flinch. If anything, the betrayal seemed to harden his resolve. He wasn't just playing defense anymore. He was going on the offensive, and every move Logan and Sophia made was feeding directly into his trap. One evening, Ethan gathered the team, Priya, Lucas, Olivia, and Owen, for a briefing. The conference room was dimly lit, the tension thick as Ethan outlined the next steps. "We have everything we need," he began, his voice calm but commanding. "The fraud, the espionage, the personal betrayals, it's all documented. But this isn't just about exposing them. It's about dismantling their lives. Piece by piece." He clicked through a series of slides, each one revealing a new layer of the conspiracy. The room was silent, the weight of the evidence sinking in. "I want them to feel it," Ethan continued. "Every lie, every theft, every betrayal. I want it to come crashing down. And when it does, I want them to know exactly who's responsible." By the time the meeting ended, there was no doubt in my mind. Ethan wasn't just building a case. He was building a reckoning. And Logan, Sophia, and Jonathan King had no idea what was coming. As I walked out of the conference room, I glanced back at Ethan. He stood alone, staring at the screen, his expression unreadable. But there was a fire in his eyes. A fire that told me this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Sophia Carter was the picture of elegance. A woman who seemed untouchable, always one step ahead. But the cracks in her world started to show the moment her financial accounts were frozen. It was subtle at first. A declined card here, a puzzled glance at her phone there. But the weight of it hit her like a tidal wave one morning when her lawyer called. "Mrs. Carter, I need to inform you," his voice trembled slightly. "Your assets are currently under investigation, and your accounts have been flagged. The FBI is involved." Sophia's grip on the phone tightened, her mind racing. She tried to sound calm. "That must be some mistake. There's no reason." "I don't think it's a mistake," he interrupted gently. "There's a lot I can't discuss. But you should prepare yourself for complications." The call ended, and the silence in the room was deafening. Sophia stared at the screen, her carefully curated world teetering on the brink. For the first time in years, she felt powerless. Desperation drove her to confront Ethan. She stormed into his office, her polished veneer crumbling as she slammed the door behind her. "Ethan," she hissed, "we need to talk." Ethan looked up from his desk, his expression unreadable. "Sophia," he said evenly, "what a surprise." "This isn't funny," she snapped. "My accounts are frozen. My lawyer won't tell me what's going on, and I know you're behind this." For a moment Ethan said nothing. Then he leaned back in his chair, a faint smile playing on his lips. Behind it? Oh no, Sophia. I'm not just behind it. I orchestrated it. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder, tossing it onto the desk between them. Emails, he said casually. Yours to be precise. Let's start with this gem, shall we? He flipped the folder open, revealing a printed email with Sophia's name at the top. Sophia's eyes widened as she read the words, her own words, mocking Ethan's intelligence, his leadership, his faith in her. She felt the blood drain from her face as she realized what else might be in that folder. Oh, and this one's a classic, Ethan continued, pulling out another page. Your plans with Logan to undermine my company, your contempt for me as a husband, and let's not forget, Nathan. Her breath caught at the mention of their son. Ethan, please, she said, her voice trembling. You don't understand. What I understand, he interrupted, his tone icy, is that our marriage, our family, everything I believed in, it was a lie, a convenient illusion for you to pursue whatever you wanted. Well, guess what, Sophia? The illusion is over. The door opened, and 2 FBI agents stepped inside. Mrs. Carter, one of them said, you're under arrest. Sophia turned to Ethan, her eyes pleading, but he didn't flinch. He didn't even look at her as the agents escorted her out. His attention was already elsewhere, focused on the next phase of his plan. Meanwhile, Logan Taylor was running out of moves. His contingency plans, once carefully designed to protect him, now felt like desperate gambits. He launched media assaults against Carter Technologies, orchestrating stories that painted the company as corrupt and unethical. Whistleblower campaigns sprang up overnight, accusing Ethan of everything from embezzlement to mistreatment of employees. But Ethan had anticipated all of it. Priya Sharma's security measures ensured that every false claim was quickly debunked, every whistleblower's evidence exposed as fabricated. The media's attempts to tarnish Carter Technologies only highlighted Logan's growing desperation. Logan's internal sabotage efforts fared no better. He planted malicious code in the company's systems, hoping to disrupt operations, but Priya's vigilance caught the breach before it could cause damage. She even traced the code back to Logan's devices, adding another layer of evidence to the growing case against him. For every step Logan took, Ethan was 3 steps ahead. The arrests came quickly after Sophia's downfall. Emma Collins, Logan's marketing ally, was the first to crack. She had been caught red-handed transmitting fake whistleblower evidence to an undercover FBI agent posing as a journalist. The moment she realized the trap, Emma panicked, offering up everything she knew about Logan in exchange for leniency. Logan was next. He was at his home, shredding documents when the FBI arrived. He barely had time to react before agents swarmed in, confiscating files, computers, and everything else in sight. They handcuffed him on his front lawn as neighbors watched from behind curtains, whispering about the spectacle. Ethan was there too. He waited until Logan was loaded into the FBI van before stepping forward, his expression calm and controlled. You think this is the end? Logan sneered, his bravado faltering. You think you've won? Ethan didn't respond immediately. He stepped closer, leaning in just enough for Logan to hear him. I didn't win, Logan. I dismantled you. Every move you made, every scheme you thought was clever, it was all recorded. Every single piece of evidence is in their hands now. Logan's face paled, and for the first time, his confidence cracked. This isn't over, he muttered, though the words sounded hollow even to him. Oh, it's over, Ethan said, his voice quiet but firm. And this is just the beginning of what you'll lose. As Logan was driven away, Ethan stood on the lawn, watching the van disappear down the street. The first phase of his retribution was complete. Sophia, Logan, and their allies were exposed, their schemes dismantled, their lives forever changed. But for Ethan, the fight wasn't just about revenge. It was about rebuilding what had been torn apart. And as he turned to leave, his mind was already focused on the next step. When Ethan Carter decided to bring his wrath upon Logan Taylor's allies, it wasn't in haste or anger. It was a masterclass in strategy. Every move he made, every step he orchestrated was precise and devastating. Watching from the sidelines, I couldn't help but marvel at the sheer brilliance of it all, and the absolute ruthlessness that came with it. The first domino to fall after Logan's arrest was Isabel Wu, Carter Technologies' head of HR. On the surface, Isabel was the epitome of professionalism, poised, efficient, and unflappable. But Priya's shadow network told a different story. Caught red-handed deleting evidence from internal systems, Isabel had been Logan's silent accomplice, ensuring that certain complaints never saw the light of day and that incriminating documents conveniently disappeared. What Isabel didn't know was that Priya had already backed up everything she tried to erase. Ethan let her finish the job, watching as she meticulously covered her tracks. Then, with a calmness that sent shivers down my spine, he walked into her office and handed her a folder. "What's this?" she asked, her voice sharp but uncertain. "Your resignation," Ethan replied. "I thought I'd save you the trouble of writing one." Her face paled as she opened the folder and saw the evidence, emails, system logs, and timestamps that left no doubt about her role in Logan's schemes. Before she could respond, federal agents entered the room. Ethan didn't stay to watch them take her away. Next came David Parker, a senior member of the legal department who had been laundering stolen funds through offshore accounts. David was good, very good. His schemes were so well hidden that they had eluded detection for years. But Lucas Reed wasn't just any forensic accountant. Using Priya's surveillance data, Lucas pieced together a web of transactions that led directly to David. The timing was perfect. Ethan waited until David thought the storm had passed, until he returned to his office with a sense of relief, believing he'd evaded suspicion. That's when Olivia Sanchez and her team arrived. David tried to play it cool, insisting he had no idea why they were there. But when Olivia dropped a stack of documents on his desk, each one highlighting his role in the embezzlement, his composure crumbled. By the time they escorted him out in handcuffs, his protests had turned into desperate pleas. The most surprising turn came from Abigail King, the wife of Jonathan King. Abigail had always been a shadowy figure in her husband's world, a quiet supporter who kept her distance from his more ruthless dealings. But when Ethan approached her with an offer of immunity, she didn't hesitate. "I've spent years watching Jonathan destroy lives," she confessed, her voice trembling. "If this is my chance to walk away from all of it, I'll take it." Her testimony was a goldmine. She provided detailed accounts of Jonathan's involvement with Logan, his corporate espionage, and even his efforts to sabotage Carter Technologies' expansions. She handed over files, recordings, and emails that left no room for doubt. For Jonathan and his brother Samuel, this was the beginning of the end. The King brothers' empire had always been built on a foundation of calculated risks and questionable alliances. They thrived on outmaneuvering their competitors, bending rules, and leveraging their vast network of financial backers. But Ethan knew their greatest strength was also their greatest vulnerability, their insatiable greed. Using the information provided by Abigail, Ethan manipulated their takeover strategy into a trap. He leaked false intel through carefully placed channels, making it appear as though Carter Technologies was vulnerable to a hostile bid. The Kings, predictably, took the bait. But what they didn't know was that Ethan had already secured key regulatory approvals and fortified his company's defenses. When the Kings made their move, they found themselves entangled in a web of legal and financial obstacles. Regulatory bodies launched investigations into their dealings, their financial backers withdrew support, and their stock prices plummeted. It was a coordinated collapse, orchestrated with such precision that it seemed almost accidental. To the outside world, the Kings appeared to have overreached, victims of their own hubris. But those of us on the inside knew the truth. This was Ethan's doing, every step of the way. By the time Jonathan and Samuel realized what was happening, it was too late. Their wealth, their reputation, and their alliances had been systematically dismantled. Even their most loyal supporters began to distance themselves, unwilling to go down with the sinking ship. Ethan made sure his involvement was minimal, his actions untraceable. To the public, he remained the resilient CEO who had weathered the storm, an uncompromising leader who refused to let his company be torn apart. I watched him closely during those days, trying to understand how he could remain so composed amidst the chaos. But there was no trace of hesitation or regret in him. He was a man on a mission, and nothing would deter him from seeing it through to the end. The final blow came during a press conference, where Jonathan King attempted to address the allegations against him. He stood at the podium, his usual confidence replaced by thinly veiled desperation. But as he spoke, reporters began receiving notifications, anonymous emails containing detailed evidence of his misdeeds. Within minutes, the press conference descended into chaos, reporters bombarding him with questions he couldn't answer. Ethan watched the broadcast from his office, a faint smile on his lips. "They did this to themselves," he said quietly, almost to himself. And he was right. Every move he'd made had been rooted in their own actions. Their greed, their betrayals, their arrogance. Ethan had simply shown the world who they truly were. As the dust settled, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of admiration and unease. Ethan had won, but at what cost? His enemies were defeated, their lives in ruins. But the man who had orchestrated it all, the man I had once admired, was no longer the same. And I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. It began at dawn. A coordinated operation, meticulously planned by the FBI, unfolded like a scene from a high-stakes thriller. Black SUVs screeched into driveways, federal agents swarmed offices, and doors were forced open in a dozen locations across the state. For Logan Taylor and his allies, there was no time to prepare, no time to run. At Apex Enterprises, the heart of the conspiracy, agents tore through filing cabinets, server rooms, and offices, uncovering the layers of fraud, embezzlement, and corporate espionage that had plagued Carter Technologies. Employees stood frozen, their hands raised, as the full force of federal authority swept through the building. Logan Taylor's properties weren't spared either. His sleek penthouse, his countryside estate, and even his private yacht were raided simultaneously. Each location yielded damning evidence. Encrypted drives, stacks of hidden documents, and financial records detailing the embezzled millions. It was as if every secret Logan had worked to bury was being unearthed at once. Logan himself was halfway to the airport when he learned of the raids. His phone buzzed relentlessly with messages from his panicked allies, but he ignored them, focusing on his plan to escape. His private jet was ready, fueled and waiting on the tarmac. He thought he could outrun the law, disappear to some far-off country where extradition was impossible. But Ethan had anticipated this too. The moment Logan arrived at the airport, federal agents closed in. His pilot, who had quietly switched sides after being approached by the FBI, delayed the takeoff just long enough for the agents to surround the jet. Logan barely made it up the steps before he was pulled back down, handcuffs snapping into place. "You don't understand," he protested, his voice rising in desperation. "I've done nothing wrong." The lead agent didn't bother responding. Logan's attempts at defiance dissolved into incoherent pleas as he was led away, his once carefully curated image reduced to a spectacle for onlookers. Sophia Carter's downfall wasn't as dramatic, but it was no less satisfying. From the moment she was arrested, she tried every trick in her arsenal, charm, manipulation, even feigned ignorance, to wriggle out of the charges. But Olivia Sanchez wasn't swayed. During her interrogation, Olivia presented Sophia with the mountain of evidence against her. Emails, financial transactions, and video footage of her meetings with Logan. "You can deny it all you want," Olivia said coolly, "but this doesn't lie." Sophia's composure cracked. Her sharp retorts turned into defensive ramblings, and by the end of the session, she slumped in her chair, defeated. Whatever power she once held had evaporated, leaving her with nothing but the consequences of her actions. Even Nathan Carter, Ethan's son, or rather, the boy he had raised as his son, wasn't spared. Ethan had discovered Nathan's complicity weeks earlier, a revelation that hit harder than any betrayal from Sophia. Nathan had been aiding Logan, providing sensitive company information in exchange for promises of wealth and power. Ethan confronted him in private, his tone calm but cold. "I trusted you," he said, his voice laced with disappointment. "I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me?" Nathan didn't respond. He just stood there, his head bowed, as Ethan laid out the consequences. His trust fund was revoked, his access to family assets terminated. Nathan would have to face life on his own terms, stripped of the privileges he had always taken for granted. "You made your choice," Ethan said, turning away. "Now live with it." The aftermath of the raids was nothing short of catastrophic for Logan's network. Each conspirator faced public disgrace, financial ruin, or imprisonment. Emma Collins, who had already provided information to the FBI, found herself ostracized by her peers. David Parker's trial became a media circus, with headlines dissecting every detail of his crimes. And the King brothers? Their empire was in shambles. Regulatory investigations uncovered years of illegal dealings, forcing them to liquidate assets and declare bankruptcy. The financial backers who had once propped them up vanished, leaving them to fend for themselves in a world that no longer respected them. Ethan, meanwhile, remained a figure of unshakable resolve. He watched from his office as the news unfolded, the headlines chronicling the destruction of those who had betrayed him. Each victory was another step toward reclaiming his company, his reputation, and his peace of mind. But he wasn't content to stop there. Carter Technologies underwent a rigorous internal purge, overseen by Priya Sharma and Lucas Reed. Every department was scrutinized, every employee vetted. Those who had played even minor roles in Logan's schemes were dismissed. Ethan made it clear, Carter Technologies would rise from the stronger, and only the loyal would remain. I was one of the lucky ones spared the axe. Watching the process was grueling, but it was also inspiring. Ethan's determination to rebuild was contagious, and those of us who stayed knew we were part of something greater than ourselves. By the time the dust settled, Logan, Sophia, and their allies were shadows of their former selves. Ethan's meticulous planning had left them without options, their elaborate web of deceit collapsing under the weight of their crimes. What struck me most was how Ethan handled it all. He didn't gloat or revel in their downfall. To the public, he remained professional, a man wronged but unbroken. To us, he was a leader who had weathered the storm and emerged stronger. But behind closed doors, I saw glimpses of the toll it had taken. There were moments of quiet, when he would stare out the window, his expression unreadable. I wondered if he felt satisfaction, or if the cost of revenge weighed heavier than he let on. Carter Technologies was on the path to recovery, its foundation rebuilt with loyalty and integrity. But for Ethan, this wasn't just about business. It was about justice, a warning to anyone who might think to cross him. As I watched him leave the office one evening, his silhouette framed against the fading light, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the end of his fight, or just the beginning of a new chapter? The dust hadn't settled for long before Ethan Carter began rebuilding. For most, the downfall of so many high-profile conspirators would have been the end of the story. But for Ethan, it was merely the beginning of a new era. Carter Technologies wasn't just going to recover, it was going to thrive. Every crack exposed during the betrayal would be filled, reinforced, and turned into a cornerstone of strength. Ethan wasted no time in reshaping his executive team. The first announcement came with little fanfare but sent ripples through the corporate world. Clara Bennett, the quiet accountant who had discovered the embezzlement, was appointed as chief financial officer. The news took me by surprise, but Ethan's explanation was simple. "You saw what no one else could," he said during the private meeting. "Now I need you to ensure it never happens again." Clara's appointment wasn't just a reward. It was a statement. Her rise to CFO signaled a shift in the company's priorities, away from politics and alliances and toward diligence and expertise. It didn't hurt that Clara had earned the respect of the remaining employees, many of whom now looked to her as a symbol of integrity. The second major change came with Priya Sharma's promotion to head of the newly formed Carter Technologies Security Division. Priya, with her bold ideas and unmatched technical prowess, had proven her worth time and again during the takedown of Logan Taylor's network. Now, she was tasked with creating something unprecedented. A security system so advanced that it would not only protect the company from external threats, but also monitor internal vulnerabilities. "We don't just need firewalls," Priya had explained during one of our meetings. We need foresight, patterns, predictive algorithms, systems that can see betrayal before it happens. Her division became a beacon of innovation, developing tools that quickly became industry benchmarks. Within months, competitors were scrambling to license Carter Technologies' security software, and the revenue generated from these systems alone soared into the billions. Ethan's vision wasn't just about protecting the company, it was about dominating the market. With the King brothers' empire in shambles, their dismantled assets were ripe for acquisition. Ethan moved quickly, buying up key properties, patents, and contracts at a fraction of their worth. Each deal was a calculated blow, not just to Jonathan and Samuel King but to their legacy. Former allies of the conspirators found themselves blacklisted. Word spread quickly. Association with the Kings or Logan Taylor was a career death sentence. Even those who had distanced themselves before the fallout struggled to recover. Ethan didn't have to lift a finger. The corporate world did it for him, unwilling to risk his wrath or tarnish their reputations by extending a hand to the disgraced. Through it all, Ethan remained a constant. He was no longer the affable CEO with a charming smile and warm handshake. He had become something else entirely, a figure of calculated authority, respected and feared in equal measure. Investors lauded his decisive leadership, pouring capital into the company with the confidence that Ethan Carter would never allow betrayal to take root again. The transformation extended beyond the boardroom. Carter Technologies became a symbol of resilience and innovation, a phoenix rising from the ashes. Employees who had once doubted Ethan's ability to lead now rallied behind him, their loyalty rewarded with promotions, bonuses, and a renewed sense of purpose. Those who remained knew that loyalty wasn't just encouraged, it was non-negotiable. I watched these changes unfold from my new position as part of Clara's financial team. The atmosphere in the company was different, tighter, more controlled. Trust was no longer assumed, it was earned and verified. Every decision Ethan made seemed to reinforce this principle. "We don't rebuild on trust," he explained during a company-wide meeting. "We rebuild on control. Systems, accountability, and vigilance. These are the pillars of our future." His words resonated, not just within the company but across the industry. The story of Carter Technologies' takedown and resurgence became a legend, taught in business schools and whispered about in corporate circles. Ethan's revenge wasn't just a tale of justice. It was a blueprint for corporate governance. There was something almost mythical about the way Ethan navigated this new phase. He rewarded loyalty with the same precision that he punished betrayal. Employees who showed dedication and ingenuity were fast-tracked to leadership roles. But those who faltered, even slightly, found themselves swiftly removed. Priya's security division became a silent sentinel, monitoring everything from email chains to subtle shifts in workplace dynamics. Clara's financial oversight ensured that every dollar was accounted for, every transaction transparent. The layers of control Ethan put in place were so thorough that it was hard to imagine anyone attempting a betrayal again. If they did, they wouldn't stand a chance. As Carter Technologies soared to new heights, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we'd come and how much had changed. Ethan's ruthless pursuit of justice had cost him dearly on a personal level. His marriage was gone, his family fractured, and his trust in others irrevocably damaged. But professionally, he was untouchable. The irony wasn't lost on me. Ethan had built an empire on trust, only to see that trust shattered. Now, he had rebuilt it on control, ensuring that no betrayal could occur without his knowledge. It was a transformation that came at a price, but one that Ethan seemed willing to pay. The final piece of Ethan's plan came to fruition during an investor summit. Standing on stage in front of an audience of industry leaders, he outlined Carter Technologies' future. A future defined by innovation, resilience, and a refusal to compromise. Our success, he concluded, isn't just measured by our profits or our products. It's measured by our principles. And those principles are stronger than ever. The audience erupted into applause, but Ethan didn't smile. He stood there, composed and resolute, a man who had rebuilt his empire from the ground up. As I watched him leave the stage, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Ethan Carter had proven he could rise from the ashes. The question now was how high he could soar, and what he might become in the process. The years hadn't dulled the sharp edges of Ethan Carter's memory. He could still recall every betrayal, every wound carved into his life by those he had once trusted. But as he stood by the massive window of his corner office, the sprawling skyline of a city shaped by his success stretched out before him, those memories no longer stung. They had transformed into something else entirely, a foundation. A decade had passed since the collapse of Logan Taylor and the King brothers. Carter Technologies had evolved into a global powerhouse, its influence felt in industries ranging from technology to finance. Its security systems, developed in the aftermath of the betrayal, had become the gold standard, used by governments and corporations alike. Profits soared, but more than that, the company's name had become synonymous with resilience and power. Ethan's enemies, once formidable, had been reduced to cautionary tales. The King brothers lived in disgrace, their once vaunted empire a distant memory. Their names occasionally surfaced in business lectures, not as examples of success, but as warnings of what unchecked greed and betrayal could lead to. Logan Taylor, denied parole for the third time, remained a forgotten figure behind bars, a shadow of the charismatic executive he had once been. And Sophia? Ethan had heard rumors. She lived a quiet, diminished life far from the circles she used to dominate. The glamour and power that had defined her were long gone, replaced by solitude and obscurity. She had made her choices and she had paid the price. Not everyone had stayed away. Nathan, who had grown older and perhaps wiser, had made attempts to reconnect with the company, to reclaim some piece of his past. But Ethan had been firm. The trust fund remained gone, and Nathan was turned away every time. Blood may have tied them, but loyalty had been severed long ago. People who betray us once, Ethan had once told Victoria, his wife, are far too likely to do it again. Victoria had been the light in the years after the storm, helping Ethan rebuild not just his company but his personal life. A capable woman with a keen mind and a heart of steel, she complemented his drive with her warmth. Together, they had built a family that reminded Ethan of what betrayal could never take: the ability to start anew. Their twin daughters, Ava and Elise, had inherited their parents' sharp intellect and unyielding determination. At just 10 years old, they showed signs of the brilliance that might one day guide Carter Technologies into its next era. Ethan didn't just see their future in the company. He saw the embodiment of everything he had fought to protect. As Carter Technologies expanded, its systems became integral to global operations, their influence extending into realms Ethan could only have dreamed of years ago. Priya Sharma's security division continued to innovate, staying years ahead of potential threats. Clara Bennett, now CEO, carried forward Ethan's vision with the same precision and decisiveness that had defined her rise. Ethan himself had transitioned into a more symbolic role. He no longer needed to oversee every detail. His presence alone was enough to command respect and fear. His legend, shaped by his ruthless retaliation against betrayal, loomed large in corporate culture. Stories of his calculated destruction of Logan Taylor and the King brothers had taken on a life of their own, whispered in boardrooms and classrooms. For some, Ethan Carter was an icon of resilience. For others, he was a cautionary figure, a reminder of the cost of betrayal and the lengths to which a wronged man could go to secure his empire. Standing in his office, Ethan allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. He thought of the man he had been, a trusting executive who believed in the strength of relationships and the integrity of those around him. That man, he realized, no longer existed. The pain of betrayal had reshaped him, forging something harder, colder. Where trust had once been the cornerstone of his leadership, control had taken its place. Every decision, every system, every relationship within Carter Technologies was governed by an unyielding principle: betrayal would never go undetected again. "Sir," Clara's voice interrupted his thoughts, breaking through the quiet. She stood in the doorway, her expression calm but purposeful. "The investors' meeting is ready whenever you are." Ethan turned, his features unreadable. "I'll be right there," he replied. As she left, Ethan glanced once more at the skyline, his empire stretching as far as the horizon. Betrayal had once threatened to destroy him, but it had become the foundation of his greatest success. Every system, every policy, every relationship within Carter Technologies was a testament to the lesson he had learned. Trust was fragile, but power, when wielded with precision, was unbreakable. Ethan walked to the long glass conference table where Carter Technologies' leadership team had gathered, their faces a mix of respect and awe. Victoria sat beside him, her quiet strength as steady as ever, while Ava and Elise watched from the back of the room, absorbing every word like the eager heirs they were. This company, Ethan began, his voice steady, was built not on second chances, but on the principle that we learn from our past. The betrayals we faced shaped us, yes, but they didn't define us. We chose to rise above them, to turn pain into power, and to create something that will endure long after we're gone. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. That is our legacy. That is Carter Technologies. The room erupted in applause, but Ethan didn't smile. He simply nodded, his mind already on the future. The empire he had rebuilt was more than just a company. It was a monument to resilience, a warning to those who might think to cross him. And as he left the room, his daughters flanking him, Ethan knew one thing with certainty. His legacy would outlive his enemies. It was a legacy not of forgiveness, but of power, a legacy carved from betrayal and honed into greatness.